Oh my god. What? Epistory is an atmospheric adventure game that centers its gameplay entirely around one thing. You guessed it, typing. You play as an unknown little girl riding on her trusty giant fox companion. You're not sure why you're there and what your purpose is, but one thing's for sure, you'll find out by exploring this world as the ground beneath you unravels itself with each step you take, puzzle you solve, and enemy you defeat. To do so, you first shift into typing mode. This shows you every interactable object within range and its corresponding words. Type them away to destroy obstacles and enemies, interact with puzzle elements, and open chests, all of which grant you inspiration points. Once you gather enough, you get ability points to spend on the upgrade screen. And right off the bat, there are already some questionable design choices here. Now, I don't know about you, but having basic movement and map features locked behind level ups are by far some of the worst things developers can do to take the fun out of progression for players. To make matters worse, these two in particular are practically mandatory, unless of course you feel like crawling across acres of land. Even if you do earn ability points at a decently fair rate, it shouldn't be an excuse to implement such upgrades, as all it does is add unnecessary bloat to your progression system, inconvenience players, and annoy them because they can't upgrade something else that is inherently more fun. That's right, as you can see, there are elements in this game, and these add a surprisingly good amount of depth to the combat mechanics. As you progress, you obtain more elements that each have their own unique properties in combat, and because the game has adaptive difficulty, deciding which element to utilize depending on the amount of enemies and the length of the words actually play a significant role in how you overcome challenges. Some elements are definitely a lot more useful than others, but it's not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. For a gameplay mechanic as fundamentally simple as typing, I genuinely think all of this is praiseworthy. Some interactions such as opening chests and winding down bridges also have you type in a way that somewhat mimics how you would actually interact with these things, and it's actually pretty fun. I also think it's a cool little detail that the devs designed the movement control scheme to be EFGI, so as to promote good typing habits. I still use the WASD scheme though, so there's that option if you're like me and can't get used to EFGI. Honestly, because of the adaptive difficulty, you don't have to worry about not being the Flash with your fingers. But if you do choke during combat, coming into any contact with the enemy will result in immediate death and having to restart the confrontation. It's really not as bad as it sounds though, as most confrontations don't last overly long. Except nests. I hate nests, and I think it's one of the weaker features the game has to offer. Epistory essentially has two parts to its exploration, the isolated dungeons and the overworld. The aforementioned nests are scattered across this overworld and are basically just unnecessarily long typing endurance runs that feel too drawn out. Before I get further into that though, what in the blazes is this map? I can hardly see anything, and the only thing I can do with it is one fixed zoom function, which really, it doesn't help if you want to have a clearer picture of something further away. I can't drag the map view around and can't even control the amount of zoom. Also, why is the map rotated like this? And why is my player icon facing some other way? It is very disorienting and completely messes with your sense of direction. Thankfully, the overworld is not super huge, but I digress. Nests, that's right. The actual reason why I hate them has got to do with music and sound design. Epistory has an amazing soundtrack that even changes dynamically as you make progress. Just have a listen to this. Beautiful, isn't it? Music plays such an integral role in the whole experience. It excites the senses, especially when it makes you feel that whatever you're doing is making some change in the game's world. Epistory knows this. So what the heck happened to the overworld and the last few dungeons? I can still close an eye for the dungeons, but the overworld? Well, you know, nothing much else happens. A lifeless and dull experience is what you get. Not to mention that the combat music in general is a bit lacking. But you know what's worse than average combat music? Remember nests? This is unedited footage of a nest fight in the overworld. The last thing I'll think is anything atmospheric. Not to mention that Epistory doesn't fare that much better in its sound design department either. Teleporting pads have no sound, crumbling metal floor gratings have totally no sound, and the worst offender of all, the enemies have no sound. They don't make any noise when walking towards you, no sound when getting hit, or the best one, being completely silent when killed. Your own high-pitched attacks don't help with the situation either. I get that it's a formless projectile, but damn, it could certainly benefit from a weightier sound effect. At this point, you might be wondering why I've yet to touch on the one thing that's most apparent in any game, the visuals. And there's good reason for that, trust me. But first, let's dive into the story and writing of the game. Epistory is told to you in two ways: narration, which is the main mode of the game's storytelling, and page fragments that you collect as you explore the dungeons. The narration, in my opinion, is the game's greatest strength and weakness at the same time. First of all, kudos to the narrator, as she did a spectacular job of fitting her lines with the themes of Epistory. The problem lies within the game's writing. More often than not, you find what is being narrated go off on something, and yet turn up with a whole lot of nothing. Verbose is the word best used to describe it, and it gives off the impression that the game thinks itself incredibly deep when it really isn't.
The hall denied her entry. She would not be denied entry.
To be fair, I think the devs did not have much of a choice, because if they only kept the lines that actually mattered, the game would have larger segments of unnarrated gameplay inconsistently scattered, which would kill pacing and immersion. But what about the page fragments then? Well, in order to talk about them properly, we'll pretty much be in spoiler territory, so if you're thinking of getting the game, skip to this timestamp here. Still here? Alright. Now, each dungeon holds a set of page fragments that basically represents a phase of the protagonist's life. The first page shows the protagonist as a child, meeting the fox for the first time, patching it up, and getting to raise it as a pet. This is where we are supposedly shown the start of a bond between the protagonist and the fox, emphasis on supposedly. The second page shows her experiencing love and a relationship. The third page shows her drowning in her studies, but manages to pull through. The fourth shows her experiencing loss through the death of a loved one, or loved ones. Who is it and how? Possibly the parents, don't know, the game never hints anything about it. The fifth shows her moving on with her life, by moving away from the countryside and venturing into the bustling city. The sixth shows her trying to make a name for herself as an artist. The seventh is... I'm honestly not certain, but in my opinion, it could be her experiencing a midlife crisis and trying to find her identity. And the last is a mishmash of memories from whatever we have seen in the previous pages. This one in particular is obtained while you're trying to push through the barren, treacherous desert to reach the end. All of the words you see in the pages are also narrated in-game. So essentially, you have the full story just from collecting the page fragments. All that's left is the ending, and I would like you, the viewer, to see it firsthand.
My name is...
The revelation here, as the scene implies, is that you were reforging her memories, building herself up again in order to wake up from the coma that is represented by the desert. How did she get into a coma? Probably from that one line in the desert, and probably from the foreshadowing of almost getting hit by a car in the 5th page, which is very corny if you think about it. You can have any opinion you want on the ending. Personally, I thought it was disappointing and forced. The bigger issue that I have though is something that I honestly would not have thought would link together: the art direction. Now, I want to preface all of this first by saying that I absolutely adore the aesthetics of the floor literally unraveling like the pages of a book, as well as the origami-esque look of the game's world. But it's precisely because I love it so much that I had to ask, why? Why was this art direction chosen? From what we've gathered from the story, the protagonist is a painter. At the very beginning parts of the game, it was even narrated that
I am not a writer. This is not my muse.
If we are to go by that, then all of this has absolutely no contextual relevance to the story. The page fragments make sense because they look like watercolor paintings, fitting for a painter, but that just makes an even greater contrast about the point of contextual relevance. Let's not even ask how friggin' origami comes into the picture here. Speaking of origami, why a fox as the chosen animal for the girl to ride on? The easiest way of explaining this is because of her nursing the fox and raising it as a pet when she was young. This would mean a strong memory of the fox, and thus the animal manifesting as the girl's companion. However, this fox is never mentioned again after the first set of page fragments, not even the rest of the entire script. The only time it appears again is the ending sequence as an origami figure. I think the kicker in all of this is that the devs stated in their own post-development article that the three-tailed fox was chosen partially because it looked good in a papercraft style. Okay, would have made some sense if the protagonist was a rider, but the real reason, lo and behold, we just needed a way to make her travel faster. One could argue that art is a free-form expression of one's ideas, and it need not always follow a set of rules and logic. To that, I fully agree, but at the same time, I'll leave you with this, the forefront of the game's Steam page.
I am not a writer. This is not my muse.
You know, as much as I bring up a lot about the game's negatives, Epistory still puts forth an overall experience that I feel is worth taking a shot at for yourself. And honestly, you can no doubt feel all the love and hard work that went into the making of the game. How can I ever simply dismiss such a heartfelt creation just like that? It's no question that the game caters to a pretty niche audience. What with the already sparse market for typing games, Epistory will last you around 6 hours and it's $15 on Steam. If you have any interest in typing games, I think it's worth the price. If you've never played a typing game before and unsure whether you like the core gameplay mechanic, get it on sale. Because like I said, even with its faults, Epistory still has wonderful things to offer. I myself gave it a shot, and I certainly don't regret trying it out. As always, subscribe to the channel, as you can expect more reviews coming your way. Keep playing games everyone, I'll see you all in the next review.